The Lord continued, somewhere this consciousness functions as space, somewhere as a jiva, somewhere as action, somewhere as substance, and so forth, but without intending to do so. There's no intention in consciousness. It's all happening, just happening. Even as all the different oceans are but one indivisible mass of water, this consciousness, though described in different ways, is but one cosmic mass of consciousness. We describe the different oceans, Indian Ocean, Pacific Ocean, and so on, as if they're separate things. But it's all just ocean, isn't it? In consciousness, we assume that I'm a bit of consciousness walking around, that you're a bit of consciousness walking around, and that all these things are separate bits of consciousness. It doesn't actually make any sense to divide it up any more than it makes sense to say that when I do this, I've somehow divided space up, because this actually exists within space. When I cup my hands together, I seem to think I'm enclosing space, but it's space that's enclosing my cupped hands. And consciousness is like this. We think we've enclosed a bit of consciousness within ourselves, but all these enclosures of consciousness are actually arising in consciousness. In the body, which is like a lotus, it is the same consciousness that imbibes the experience, which is like honey, gathered by the restless mind, which is like the bee. So this is consciousness in the form of the intellect. Intellect is about gathering experiences. It's about labeling and acquiring experiences. And this too is what consciousness does. It does it in the form of the intellect, in the form of the cognitive process. In this universe, all these various beings, the gods, the demons, mountains, oceans, and so forth, flow within this infinite consciousness, even as eddies and whirlpools appear in the ocean. Even the wheel of ignorance, which causes the wheel of life and death to revolve, revolves within this cosmic consciousness, whose energy is in constant motion. It was consciousness in the form of the four-armed Vishnu that destroyed the demons, even as a thunderstorm equipped with the rainbow quenches the heat that rises from the earth. It is consciousness alone which takes the form of Shiva and Parvati, of Brahma the Creator and the numerous other beings. This consciousness is like a mirror which holds a reflection within itself, as it were, without undergoing any modification thereby. Without undergoing any modification in itself, this consciousness appears as all these countless beings in this universe. The infinite consciousness is like a creeper. It is sprinkled with the latent tendencies of countless jivas, desires of the buds, past creations are the filaments. The sentient and the insentient beings are parts of the creeper, where one appears as many, but it has not become many. It is by this infinite consciousness that all this is thought of, expressed and done. It is the infinite consciousness alone which shines as the sun. It is the infinite consciousness which appears as the bodies, which are in fact inert, and which come into contact with one another and derive various experiences. This consciousness is like the typhoon, which is unseen in itself, but in which sand particles and dust rise and dance as if by themselves. This consciousness casts a shadow in itself, as it were, and that is regarded as tamas, or inertia. So inertia, or tamas. Inertia is the quality of being inert, or apparently being inert. So we see certain things as having life or being inert. In this body, thoughts and notions generate action in the light of this very consciousness. Surely, but for this consciousness, even an object which is immediately in front of oneself cannot be experienced, This is the point. It's so obvious and subtle, but also so subtle. Without awareness, there cannot be anything. We can hypothesize that there are things without awareness, but that's only hypothesizing. The first assumption of anything that we say or do is there's awareness of it. This is the implicit assumption whenever we talk about anything. I was reading a very interesting and enjoyable book recently about consciousness and about identity. It was very funny because the author seems to be trying to explain away awareness in terms of subatomic particles, I suppose. It is very curious that awareness should try to explain away itself, or to try to explain itself, because that's what's happening. He didn't seem to be able to acknowledge, the author didn't seem to be able to acknowledge his own awareness, which was the starting point. The implicit assumption, which you often find in Western thought, that awareness is somehow the end product. It's the end product of something. But it's actually the starting product. It's actually the starting point. It's the starting point by which any undertaking, any experience is begun from. So nothing can happen without awareness. Even hypotheses about there being no awareness, that also happens as a result of awareness. The body cannot function nor exist but for this consciousness. It grows, it fails, it eats. This consciousness creates and maintains all the movable and the immovable beings in the universe. The infinite consciousness alone exists, naught else exists. Consciousness alone has arisen in consciousness. And that consciousness that has arisen in consciousness is all the notions with which consciousness identifies.